Welcome to our third installment of World Revolution News. I am Thomas Jefferson, and today is June 17, 2011.
Hello everyone from around the world, I'm Emily Pankhurst, and thank you for watching. We start this broadcast with a tape uploaded last Saturday from the internet hacking group, Anonymous, who claims that the Federal Reserve is guilty of crimes against humanity and calls for the resignation of Ben Bernanke. Then they went on to demand the breakup of the Federal Reserve and other major banking institutions. This is not the only prominent target by the group, also threatening Bank of America and Sony. The group is currently being accused by Sony for allegedly hacking and shutting down its PlayStation system in May, an accusation the group has denied. Anonymous announced its support for WikiLeaks last December and launched attacks against PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa in retaliation for anti-WikiLeaks acts. Anonymous, in support of protesters calling for revolution in the Egyptian uprising earlier this year, knocked offline Egypt's Ministry of Information and ousted the President National Democratic Party websites. They also released the governmental officials' names and passwords of the email, in support of the Arab Spring. Countries targeted include Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, and Morocco. Back in February, Anonymous also announced a new attack on Koch Industries, as a response to the Wisconsin protests this year too. Just this past Sunday, Anonymous struck again and reportedly took down the site of the Spanish police. The Spanish National Police stated that this operation corresponds to the fact that the Spanish government considers this group of hackers a threat to national security. There was an IMF hacking last week that is being investigated by the FBI. The attack was so significant that the World Bank, an international agency focused on economic development, across the street from the IMF in Washington, D.C., had cut the computer link that allows the two institutions to share information. Now Anonymous has not been linked. Many sources actually believe it could be a foreign intelligence agency. Whoever did hack the IMF data is definitely sitting pretty with some insider information like no other. One thing is for sure, along with Facebook and Twitter, hacking is becoming a vital part of protesting and revolution throughout the world.
And in Asian news, where riots throughout China have erupted as the government has sent police urban vehicles into town centers, prompting an internet blackout that left thousands blogging about violence on the streets. After several big clashes in recent weeks, the names of 6 cities have been eradicated from the search engines of the country's most popular sites. Chinese police have told foreign media not to turn up at spots that have been anonymously designated for weekly protests, threatening them with loss of their work permits and other punishments if they don't comply. Since the protests in Middle East and Africa, the government's electronic censorship has pushed more security in China, as they still remain in firm hold of their citizens, but remain afraid still nonetheless of social media and its newfound revolutionary qualities. Chinese authorities have tightened security across the province of Inner Mongolia after days of unrest. This is the largest such protest in this area in over 20 years. Over 1,000 riot police officers were patrolling the streets in Liquan after days of unusually large protests over the death of a local legislator who had been in police custody. The Xinjiang protest had many onlookers, also migrant workers, apparently sided with the vendors, and photographs were posted on the popular Sina Weibo service. A Chinese version of Twitter showed overturned police cars. The one-party government has been cautious to balance their use of violence with appeasing, including the removal of some corrupt local officials. According to the finance ministry in China, state media like CCTV also have been reporting the riots quick and open, compared with previous years, in what seems to be an attempt by the government to take control of the narrative, ahead of the bloggers. The Chinese Communist Party openly spent more on domestic security in 2010 than it did on national defense for the first time ever. They have been sensing this protest for years.
The Arab uprising is trying to move the revolution into second gear. Protests spread across the Arab world, but so far the leaders of Libya, Syria and Bahrain have refused to step down, responding to popular unrest with brute force. In this second round of the Arab Spring, they are taking to the streets and attempting to topple the established authoritarian, like what happened in Egypt and Tunisia, is currently being met by brute force in Libya, Syria, Yemen and Bahrain. On Friday in Yemen, nearly 100,000 protested in a main square of the capital, demanding the president's ouster in the biggest rally since Ali Abdullah Saleh left for Saudi Arabia after he was wounded in an attack on his palace recently. Armed militants took over offices and fired rocket-propelled grenades at the central bank branch office and the compound of the judiciary on Wednesday, the official said. Anti-government demonstrations have engulfed the country, and protesters are demanding that President Ali Abdullah Saleh leave office. On Syria, where thousands of Syrians demonstrated all over the country last Friday, especially in smaller cities and rural towns. This revolution has been bloodier than most, similar to Libya, where Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has demonstrated ruthless violence to prevent a revolt. It is actually a family tradition. His father had done the same in February 1982, in what is called the Hama massacre, when the Syrian army, under the orders of the president of Syria Hafez al-Assad, conducted a scorched earth policy against the town of Hama, in order to quell a revolt by the Sunni Muslim that resulted in between 10,000 and 15,000 dead. And last but not least, Bahrain, which is ruled by a Sunni monarchy and has the backing of Saudi Arabia, crushed the democracy movement in a small, but strategic Gulf country earlier this year, where the majority Shiite population complains of marginalization. The strategic island kingdom, home to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, has been in lockdown mode for months. The crackdown included bringing in a 1,500 Saudi Arabian-led military force to back up Bahrain's embattled leadership. With the lockdown now lifted, more than 10,000 demonstrators joined Bahrain's first public rally in months Saturday. The U.S. also licensed $760,000 in exports of rifles, shotguns and assault weapons in 2010 to Bahrain. The possibility that American-built weapons might have been used against protesters is very possible. The U.S. has condemned the violence in Bahrain, but has stopped short of any tangible punishments against the rulers, in one of Washington's military hubs in the Gulf. President Obama met earlier this week with Bahrain's visiting Crown Prince, Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa. Obama urged Bahrain to respect the rights to free speech and peaceful assembly, but also reaffirmed America's strong commitment to the kingdom despite the fact they kill their own protesters. The brutal crackdown in the Middle East leads us into our final segment concerning governments and crackdowns.
We would like to end this episode with a dedication to Tiananmen Square. It was 22 years ago this month in China. The world witnessed one of the most horrible acts a modern government has ever performed. When in 1989 thousands of protesters, mostly students, took Tiananmen Square to overthrow the current government. They wanted a democratic system, they wanted to clean up the corrupt government, and they wanted a better way of life. What they received was a brutal massacre, and one of the worst acts in the 20th century. The events are imprinted on the minds of all of us, but not in China. Even today, with the dawn of a supposed capitalistic system, and the largest internet usage in the world, the communist government wants to keep all information about Tiananmen Square from the people. In China there is no man alone in front of the tank, no such symbol of the attempted revolution. That inspires us here. Tiananmen Square, we have not forgot. Remember, until next week, it is the United Banking Cartel versus us, not me versus you, for we are the many, and they are the few.